Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt the urge to do something you've always wanted to do but felt you couldn't? Well, I did. And I'm going to tell you how I did it. I thought I was making myself feel alive again. I wanted to have that feeling of being free again. I wanted to remind myself that you can also let loose or have fun while you are married. I mean, because most people nowadays, especially women, no longer be themselves when they get married. Some lose themselves. Some women end up feeling like they've lost themselves in marriage. They make their marriages look like a union to someone's true self. But then they end up regretting it because they're not allowed to do the things that made them happy. They become people they're not. And that kills most of our married sisters. It doesn't feel free when you get married. I'm married and I'm really proud of it. I'm a 28-year-old woman married to Simon Goldman, who is 45. We live in a Gulf country estate that my husband owns. He's a golfer and a real estate investor, which is how we met. He was purchasing one of my father's buildings, and I was in my father's office when he arrived. It's actually pretty crazy that my father is the one who introduced him to me. Well, I guess I wasn't his little girl anymore. I felt like he wanted to get rid of me. We started going out on dates. He was charming and handsome. I also figured out that my father and his father were friends, and also had a joint company that was set up before I was born. After years of dating, we decided to get married. I was the happiest woman ever. However, months went by and I was starting to feel a little bored, especially when my husband was always away on golf trips. I always get tempted to go out clubbing and doing something crazy before I reach my 30 seconds, but I always contain myself and don't go out at all. I discipline myself. My temptation ends up being a thought, but there was a time when my husband left for a golfing trip. I could resist the urge to go out with my friends from college. I saw that as the perfect opportunity to break free from the monotony of my married life and have a little fun. So I started by cleaning the house and doing some much-needed grocery shopping. But as the day went on, I found myself feeling more and more I was feeling restless, so I called my friends to see if they were still up for going out. They said yes, so we went to a club a few hours away from our city. It was supposed to be a girls' night, but things got pretty wild. We had a couple of drinks and a couple of guys came over to us. Things got pretty wild. One of the guys approached me and started giving me compliments. He was very charming and a bit handsome, probably around 25. One of my friends said, "Let's move the party elsewhere." I really wish she hadn't said that, but I couldn't predict what was about to happen. We went to the Four Seasons Hotel and booked a presidential suite so we could have fun without disturbing anyone. Everything is soundproof, so we were able to drink with the guys. I noticed that there were 4 of us and 4 of them. Everyone had a partner. I felt a little uneasy, as I was the only married person amongst my friends. And they were so relaxed. I have to admit, those guys were funny. The guy who was giving me a compliment came to me as I was gazing at the view outside. He introduced himself as Harold Thomas. He had a way of making me feel comfortable. Well, this is when I realized I needed to loosen up a bit as I was feeling a bit. We started chatting about life and conspiracy theories and realized we had something in common. The drinks kept coming, the music kept playing, and our conversation got deeper. I found myself drawn to his charming smile and kind eyes. We fell asleep on the couch cuddling each other and I was grateful. I felt a bit guilty at first, but also excited that nothing had happened and I had the chance to let my hair down. I'd never done anything like that before and wasn't sure if I could ever forgive myself, but nothing happened, so why feel guilty? As the day went on, I found myself getting carried away and the guilt started to fade. Our trip came to an end and I knew I had to go back to my house, which was pretty boring. Plus, my husband was coming back, so I had to go when I got home. I was surprised to find my husband already back because I didn't expect him to be back so soon. I'd also tried to get back earlier than him, so I was surprised he'd beaten me. He asked where I'd come from, so I told him I'd been on a night away with the girls. I left out the guy bit because if I'd mentioned it, there'd have been trouble the next day. I was going through the pictures that we had taken during the trip. One of the girls had taken them and put them on Instagram. One picture caught my attention. It was a picture of me and the Harold guy, and it looked too intimate and cozy. I told Miranda, my friend, to take it down because if Simon or any of our relatives, luckily, she listened and took it down. which was a huge relief. Sometimes my husband and I would spend our weekends together, but it wasn't fun because he would always watch golf games and I would be sitting with him reading a book, which was purely boring for me. My mind was on the trip I'd had with the girls. I'd been feeling neglected by my husband for quite some time. Even though he was around, he was always busy with work and never seemed to have time for me. I felt like I was just a mere obligation to him, rather than a beloved partner. I'd be lying if I said the girls' night was boring. It was actually full of life and fun. I enjoyed every moment of it and wish I could go back to that night. My husband had been too busy with work and golf to join us. Golf really isn't my thing. I've realized there's no fun in it. It's a game for rich people. One day, a guy from the trip texted me on Instagram. I was surprised he'd send me a text on my Instagram, but I didn't ask why. I just replied to his messages, which were actually very good. I was bored at home, so I agreed to go to a party with him. I was worried about what I would tell my husband, but I got through it. I needed to get out and have some fun. I had been cooped up in the house for too long. The party was going to be a great way to let loose. The next day was a golfing trip with his buddies. He even asked if I wanted to join him, but I said I was fine at home. I turned down his offer for something much better and funnier, so when my husband left for his annual golfing trip with his buddies, he gave me a peck on the cheek and told me to have a great weekend. He said I should take care of myself, and he would see me when he came back. I was really happy he left. I got ready for the day ahead, but as soon as my husband left, I let out a sigh of relief. I'd been itching to let loose and have some fun, but I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize our marriage. That weekend was a great opportunity for me to let loose. As soon as my husband left, I decided to make the most of the situation. I put on my favorite dress, did my hair and makeup, and waited for Harold to come and get me. When we got there, I could tell that there were a lot of people there. I guess it was friends and maybe colleagues. I saw his friends from that girls' night out. They were with their partners, who were really friendly and up for a laugh. The music was pumping, everyone was having a great time, and I was just enjoying being myself. I woke up feeling a bit hungover and regretful. I'd had a bit too much to drink the night before and I was worried that my husband would notice when he got back, but as I looked in the mirror I saw a confident and carefree version of myself staring back at me. I realized that I didn't need to be perfect all the time and that it was okay to let loose and have fun over the next few days. I continued to explore my newfound freedom whenever my husband was either at work or golfing. I kept chatting and going out with Harold. He made me feel alive, as he introduced me to new clubs in New Jersey. I realized I'd found my true self. I'd finally become the person I'd always wanted to be. My friends and I still went out, but they respected my husband, so they didn't want to upset him. My friends treat Simon like he's God. Sometimes I wondered if they were fooling him or me to think that they respected my marriage. I once suggested to my husband that we should sometimes go out as a couple and have fun just to let loose and find our groove back. Before we got married, we would go out maybe 2 weekends a month, and then we would come back and focus on our jobs, but when we got married, he changed to be someone I didn't know and didn't like because he was boring. He was all about golfing. Even if we were spending time together, he would talk about his golfing games and his buddies. Harold, on the other hand, was unleashing the person that I was. He was so wild to a point. He'd sometimes call and say, "Let's go out," or he'd be at the gate, waiting for me so we could go out when my husband was even around. I'd have to turn him down when he did that. I understood and told him to call in advance before driving all the way to where I was staying, even when my husband was in the house. I had set boundaries earlier, but the guy kept doing his own thing. I even told him that I was going to end the friendship if he didn't stop. He was acting like a crazy, obsessed, possessed person, and I couldn't let him ruin my marriage. Over time, Simon had started going out a lot. He was spending less time with me. I also spent a lot of time with Harold. What I loved about him was that he was so adventurous and full of life. I would say he was an extrovert. I always enjoyed spending time with him because, although he was an outgoing person, he knew what he wanted. He was working as an IT technician, but he was really just working for himself. As time went on, I spent more and more time with Harold. I got to know him better and better and found out that we had a lot in common. With Simon, it was always about work and golf. Sometimes I felt a bit regretful about getting married to him, But I remembered that I met Simon at my father's office. We chatted here and there, but to be honest, my father kept pushing me to spend more time with Simon, so I did as I was told and we got on really well. The more I learned about him, the more I saw his gentleness, care and passion to be the best golfer and get to be on Tiger Woods' level. I was drawn to him even more since I was an interior designer. Our jobs really clicked, and then I fell in love with him. I don't know how, but I found myself head over heels with him. We got married, and our families were happy for us. Well, more like our fathers were happy. We were also happy because we had chemistry. It was a deeper connection. His golfing games I would sometimes go with him just to give him some support and cheer him on. But as time went by, I realized that golf wasn't really my thing. It wasn't the kind of game that I would choose to watch and enjoy. I just didn't understand it because my father would also go out to play. Simon played golf with his colleagues, but it wasn't his main focus. I think golf was more about business for him. He saw it as a way to network and have fun while discussing business matters, but to me, it was a hobby and a career. I guess that's why Simon and I didn't work out. But on Harold's side, he got me. He knew what I needed and gave it to me. I was lacking a bit of fun in my life, and he gave me what I needed. My friends started complaining about the way I was spending more time with Harold and would ask if I was sleeping with him, which came as a shock because I never thought they would think so low of me. They even thought I was cheating on Simon. I was spending a lot of time with Harold, but I loved Simon and respected our marriage. One happy morning, I woke up happy and in a great mood that weekend. Simon and I had a very steamy and loving intimate moment the previous night. We had a lot of love. I got up early to make breakfast for my husband so we could get ready for the day and go out together to treat ourselves and try to bring back the spark we had before we got married. I had planned everything, and I was really happy that I was going to spend time with my husband. After a long time of him always going out, that morning he came down the stairs wearing his golfing clothes and his golf kit. I didn't understand why he was wearing that, so I asked why he was wearing his golfing clothes when we had plans for the day. He just gave me a very poor excuse and told me that his golf buddies. I found out that Simon had been texting his golfing buddies about a game that was taking place on the same day we had planned to spend together. I was really annoyed at him and at myself for thinking that he would choose me over his golfing games or his friends. I just couldn't understand why someone promises to spend time with you and even reassures you that the day was only for us, and we were going to switch off our phones so that we would not get any disturbances. But then his phone was on, and he got a message from a friend about a game that was taking place just when we had planned something else. I was really disappointed. I didn't say anything. I was really upset because it was obvious that his friends and golf were more important to him than spending time with me. I even started to dislike his friends and his love for golf. It felt like they were always getting in the way and taking up his attention. It made me feel like I was nothing to him. It was like he didn't even care about me at all. It crushed me. I was so sad, I just started doing my own thing and drinking to forget about it. Harold was busy with his own things, so I just stayed home and drank my sorrows away. I even stopped going to work. The tension in the house was affecting my work to the point where I wasn't focusing on details and making mistakes. I lost 2 clients who wanted to renovate their house, and I did the opposite of what they wanted and ordered. Despite the pressure, I was still angry at Simon for trying to apologize. I didn't accept his apology, so we continued living as housemates. It's difficult to accept an apology for wrongdoing or broken promises without a change in behavior. We say actions speak louder than words, but in Simon's case, it was more like words spoke louder than his actions. His actions were completely opposite to what he said he would do to make it up to me for ditching me at the last minute. I hate it when people make promises and then don't keep them. It's a different matter altogether, and breaking promises is a shame. I couldn't even turn to my parents for support because they had high hopes for my marriage with Simon and had placed a lot of trust in him. If I had told them what was going on, they would have disagreed with me. I started to see Simon in a different light. After a few weeks, I was back to my old self, going out and having fun. I realized that I was wasting my time hoping that Simon would change because he was a naturally boring and serious person. The only time we would go out was when we went with his my friends and their partners would often ask me to go out with them on my birthdays. Simon was too focused on his work and golf to pay much attention to me, so I would go out to different clubs every day since I had taken some time off work to recover from the situation. Simon asked me to speak with him about my recent behavior. He said he didn't know I was a wild person and hanging out with bad boys. He started shouting at me, but I still continued going out, especially with Harold, despite his disapproval. As I was having more fun and letting loose, Harold asked me to go to another party at his friend's house, so I said yes. When we arrived, the party was really lively. Harold introduced me to some of his other friends, who were great company and full of energy. We danced until we were tired later on. I was tired, so I told Harold that I was tired. Fortunately, Simon was away that weekend on a golfing trip with his friends, so he wouldn't know that I'd gone out anyway. Harold took me to this room, which I think was a guest room. I was told that I'd drunk a lot and danced. I don't remember the exact words, but I remember Harold saying something as we reached the bedroom. We were both pretty out of it, so I don't remember the exact words, but he said he'd always had a crush on me. He kissed me and I kissed him back. I was drunk and didn't think about what I was doing. I enjoyed it and we kissed for a while. Things got more intense and I found myself lost in the moment. I ended up sleeping with him. When I woke up, he was cuddling me like I was his teddy bear. My nana even said I'd committed adultery and gone against my wedding vows. I woke up feeling guilty and confused. I'd cheated on my husband, which I'd never thought I'd do. I didn't know if I could forgive myself, let alone my husband if he were to find out. I felt a flood of regret. I even regretted agreeing to come to the party with Harold. I was scared that if Simon was to find out, it would ruin my marriage. I loved my husband, and I didn't want to lose him over some fun and letting loose that I had needed. Well, I had thought I needed it. Days later, Harold texted me and asked to meet up so we could talk about ourselves. I completely and bluntly refused to see him. I wanted nothing to do with him. I hated him. I was really upset with myself for what I'd done to Simon and our marriage, but I hated Harold even more. It was like he'd taken advantage of me when I was drunk and vulnerable. So when I said no to his request for a meeting, he started calling me names and swearing at me. He even called me a harad and threatened to leak our sex tape on social media so that I'd see what my husband and my family would say. I kept saying no and I thought the lunatic was serious when he sent me a video of us having sex at his friend's house. I saw the video and started to panic. I had no choice but to meet with him, because if Harold leaked the video, it would ruin my reputation, my marriage, my job, and everything. My family would be disappointed, especially my parents. I had messed up, and I had no one to blame but myself. It wasn't like he had forced himself on me. We were both intoxicated and I slept with him willingly. I was scared, I won't lie. Months later, Simon had gone on another golfing trip, and the Harold guy was still blackmailing me into meeting with him, or he would release the disgusting and humiliating video. I knew I had to find a way to deal with the issue. As the days went by, Simon was still not back. I started to miss my husband. I missed the way he made me laugh, the way he held my hand, and the way he always knew how to make me feel better. I realized that I didn't need to let loose and have fun at the expense of my relationship, but I did anyway. When my husband finally returned from his trip, I was nervous about how he would react to my newfound. I knew I'd done wrong by my husband, but I had to tell him what had been going on. I'd leave out the intimate moment I'd had with Harold, and I won't even mention that I was spending time with him. He'd warned me to stop going out with Harold, so I told him what he wanted to hear and told him I wanted to let loose. I thought he might get angry or upset because I knew my husband. He always wanted perfection. What I told him wasn't what he liked, but he was happy to see me and embrace the changes I'd made. He said he'd missed me and was proud of me for being true to myself. I was relieved he wasn't angry, but he understood my concerns and desires. His response made me fall much harder for him and regret ever allowing myself to go out with Harold. From that day on, our relationship was different. We were both more open and honest with each other, and we made an effort to prioritize our relationship and have more fun together. I learned that it was okay to let loose and be myself, but that it was also important to respect and prioritize my relationship. So from there, Simon started changing. Things were looking up. I was happy, Simon was happy, and everyone was happy. We even decided to attend couples therapy because we thought our issues were not only the ones we saw on the outside, but also inside our hearts and souls. As we were attending a couples therapy sessions, I was glad that Simon finally realized that he also had an impact on what had been going on and why. I somehow found myself letting loose, and he realized that he had been so caught up in his career and golfing to a point that he had neglected his wife. I was really happy with the progress of our marriage. The therapy sessions helped a lot, but I still hadn't told my husband about what happened with Harold. Meanwhile, Harold was still threatening me. I kept telling myself that he was just a dog that barks but can't bite. 2 months later, my relationship with my husband was on another high. I had also started going on his golf trips, so that when he was done playing, we would then go out and have fun and let loose with him. It's great to let loose with your partner because you get to do anything that makes the two of you happy and satisfied. I realized that if I had spoken up earlier or even included the parents, what happened between me and Harold wouldn't have happened. We can't change what's done, but we can learn from it. The time has passed. It was a sunny morning. Good morning. I woke up early to prepare for the family gathering that was going to be in our house. It was a tradition that we usually do twice a year in different households, so that day it was going to be in our house. My husband also woke up in a very jolly mood. He helped me prepare and said everything was ready for breakfast. We had a light breakfast before we went to we had a great time together. We had a lot of fun, and it was really refreshing not knowing what would happen later on. The families came to both mine and Simon's. I was really happy and surprised that even the relatives that we had last seen a long time ago were actually present. It was a great day until things went downhill as we were all chilling and laughing. I'd even forgotten about Harold, but he had to get involved in a way that was pretty damaging and embarrassing. I'd never forgive myself or Harold for messing up my life and my marriage. So we were having a good time playing board games with the families when Simon came to the living room looking like he was ready to kill. His face and body language were full of rage. I couldn't even think that he might have found out about my mistake, so I followed him to our bedroom. He looked at me with eyes full of rage, hurt, and disappointment. He asked to speak with me on the side, without thinking about what would have made him so angry. I followed him to our bedroom. When we got there, he threw a phone at me. I was confused about why he would throw a phone at me, so I looked at him, hoping to get the answer I had been asking myself. Instead, he told me to press play on the video that was posted on Twitter. I did as he told me, without thinking. I was shocked when I pressed play. My husband had posted a video of him and me making out at his friend's house. It was trending. I was trembling and shaking. I was lost for words. I couldn't even utter an apology because I didn't know what to apologize for. I looked at the comments and saw that someone had posted a picture taken by. I saw a photo of me with Harold on a night out and in the hotel room. I knew then that my marriage was over. I couldn't do or say anything to save it. I also saw a comment saying that the photo had been posted by someone who had taken it. I knew that meant it was only one person who had a problem with me and Harold. I called my friend Miranda, who was the only one who had a problem with me hanging out with Harold. I tried to explain what had happened, but Simon wasn't interested. He was really angry. I knew that if he was aggressive, he would have hurt me. I was trying to apologize and explain, but he slapped me. I was so shocked, I ran to the living room to get away from Simon, who was furious. But when I got there, I saw my mom's eyes, which would haunt me forever. My father's eyes were filled with disappointment, and my mother's were filled with disgust. Simon came downstairs with my luggage and told my parents that he didn't want me in his house anymore and that I should expect divorce papers soon. My mother just said she said I was a witch in her house because I was influencing my young siblings to perform abominations and homosexuality to the family name. I was really hurt by her words, but I couldn't blame her because I had brought shame and humiliation upon myself. A few months passed and I was drinking a lot. I was in a really bad place mentally. I'd lost my husband, my family, my friends, my reputation. I was drinking and crying myself to sleep every day, regretting everything I'd done. I was questioning myself, asking where I'd gone wrong and what I'd done wrong. My only mistake was letting Harold manipulate me into sleeping with him, then humiliating me like that. He'd become obsessive, and I didn't allow it. On the other side, the person I'd called a friend and thought had my back no matter what happened, I couldn't blame anyone else because ultimately, I was the one who was married. I should have made sure I didn't do anything to taint my image or destroy my marriage, but I didn't. I wanted to feel free and let loose. There was no time to cry over spilled milk, so I had to try to get up, dust myself off, and move on. I knew it wasn't going to bring back what I had lost, but I had to bring back myself. I attended AA meetings because of the alcohol. I was dealing with some pretty rough stuff at the time, and my therapist was a huge help. She helped me pick up the pieces and get back on my feet. A couple of months later, I was feeling good. I kept doing what I loved, exploring new places and focusing on my job as an interior designer. The only difference was that I was no longer working for someone else's company, but myself. I knew then that happiness is found within yourself, and that you create your own happiness without going out and doing things. I also learned that everyone is born alone, so you shouldn't try to find happiness or validation elsewhere. You only have yourself in this world, and no one else. I learned that the hard way, but I'm grateful for the lessons I have learned. This took a lot for me to share. I am not proud of it, but I am proud of the woman I had become. Please advise me on how I should have tried to avoid everything from happening and how to deal with temptations when they come. No judgments, please. Only guides and advice.